Welcome back to TV Toastmasters. I'm Beth Genly, your host for this segment. Every kind of business, every kind of work has an internet component now that involves our own faces. And we always want to put our best face forward. But how do we do that well? You're going to love my guest today, AJ Coots, who is an experienced and respected headshot photographer and international speaker, and she has a lot of opinions on how we can make our own headshots and our appearance in any photograph send the message that we want to send. AJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Beth. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I am glad you're here. And what I would love is for you to just leap right in and tell us your philosophy about headshots, because I haven't heard it before and I think it's wonderful.
Okay, well, first of all, I think that what makes the world go round is connection. Mm-hmm. Bringing your own message, bringing your personality, bringing who you are and your unique value proposition into the world. Well, that's the one thing that's going to change the world, right? And I think that in business, often that's a bit of a struggle, I think, sometimes when we start out by maybe pushing through those barriers. But I think that a headshot is one of the most powerful ways that you are pushing past that fear and saying, here I am, world. I'm ready to connect with you. Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited to tell you a little bit more about what that means and what the power in that can be for people. Because I'm not sure that I think we have an inkling that it's important, but there's a lot of depth that we can go into about how we can make that really powerful and really expressive of who we are and how we connect to other people.
So I've had my headshots taken a few different times over the course of my career, and I've read a little bit about it, and most of the advice that I read was very technical. It always says to smile. Mm. It always says to make eye contact with the camera. There's even this thing about how you squint or whatever, and it seems very technical and a little daunting. And I understand that you approach it really differently.
Sure. Well, first of all, I really believe that if a headshot just shows a picture of your head, that it has completely failed you in every way. That, you know, a headshot shouldn't just be something that people use to find you at an airport. Right? Because nobody ever hired you for having a certain hair color and a certain eye color. Mm-hmm. They hire you for the impact that you're going to make in their life. Right. So your clients have a problem, and you are going to solve that problem through your interaction with them. That can be through a service. It can also be from the stage where because of your speaking, you're going to create catalytic change. And so the first place that I start with headshots is that it's not about showing a picture of your head. In a nutshell, a headshot shouldn't show what you look like. It should show what you are like to work with and know. That's the center.
And so if you freeze up in front of the camera, that's gonna come across, I would imagine.
Yes, yeah. I mean, obviously that would be, at the very basic level, you don't want to quote unquote freeze in front of the camera. But I always say, you mentioned smiling,
yes.
Right? So I try to pull back a little bit from focusing too much on the smile. So I would say, since the first place we're thinking, I'd like to zoom out just a little bit, if I can use a photographic term.
Sure.
I say before you even get in front of the camera, the first thing you want to do is sit down in front of a piece of paper, or sit down with a friend and brainstorm a little bit about what are the characteristics that my clients value me for, right? Because I think that there's a false dichotomy that happens in photos, because we're all used to school picture day, right?
Right.
Where we were really concerned about just looking pretty or not pretty, mm-hmm. right? And if you're in 8th grade, you're trying to catch the eye of that special person. You want to just look attractive. That's your one end goal. But when you're in business, when you move forward in your profession, you're trying to communicate the value that you bring. The value that would be, if your best client left the room and they were recommending you to somebody, they would use these adjectives to describe you. She's warm, she's innovative, she's someone who's smart, she's at the top of her game, she's really confident, or she's really easy to talk to. So those adjectives, that's where you want to start. Because the point of the photo isn't that surface. It's about, first of all, saying, what do I want to communicate? And then we go from there.
I have so many questions at this point. And so we're not talking about labeling. This person is warm, right? There's no words.
Sure.
And there's cultural barriers and all kinds of things. How do you get that across in an image?
Sure. Okay. Well, there are two components.
Yes.
So the one component is lighting, and the other component is coaching. So I'll break down both. So the lighting is something that I'm an expert in. So I am trained in cinematic lighting technique, which is, in a nutshell, is the lighting that they use in movies and TV to tell a story. So if you think about a TV show, say like Breaking Bad from a few years ago, even if you turned on Breaking Bad in the middle of the show, you didn't see any of the actors or the title, you know, at least just from the lighting, that you're watching a gritty dystopian drama, right? Right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
your gut is primed to expect that. And either you're like, yes, this is my show, or else you're like, no, I don't like that sort of thing, right? Or if you're watching something like Pushing Daisies or The Good Place, the colors just show you, oh, this is going to be a quirky comedy. I'm up for this.
Right.
So that is part of the equation, and it's a part that shouldn't be ignored. But it's not entirely your responsibility, right? So that's more the photographer's responsibility. But if you can come into the session armed with, these are my adjectives, the photographer should have the skill to be able to break that into lighting keys and lighting tones. So we can talk a little bit more about that, but I'll really quickly skate over to coaching, right? Because that's the other side. So it's especially helpful if you have someone in front of you in the lens who can be your coach. But you can do a little bit of self-coaching. You can do a little bit of self-coaching as well. And that is getting back to that smile versus not smile, or the squint, which, apologies to the guy who put that out there in the world, but it's terrible advice for anyone who's over about 19 and who is not an Instagram model. An Instagram model squinches her eyes and she looks great. She doesn't squinch her eyes, she looks great. Like, it's fine. The person who invented that is a model, so it works for him. But for the rest of us, I suggest don't think about your smile, but getting back to connection. You want to think about connecting with someone you love, connecting with someone that makes you feel great. So what you might do is, instead of sitting down in front of the camera and saying, gotta smile, I might think, I'm going to pretend that I'm sitting across the table from Beth, who I've had lunch with 100 times and I know and I love, and she always makes me laugh. And I'm going to look in that lens and I'm going to say, hi, Beth, in my mind, and I can't help but have a human response to that. So that would be the place to start, is, again, reorienting around what are we really trying to do with these. We're not just putting our face out there, we're putting our connection out there. So thinking about how we can connect is the starting place.
That's really lovely, and I'm going to call a short break right here just to clear my throat.
Okay.
Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Taylor and I'm with TV Toastmasters. My home group is Feedbackers in Beaverton, Oregon. I first joined Toastmasters for a couple reasons. I was nervous. I had trouble speaking in front of others. I needed some help. And when I joined Toastmasters, not knowing what to expect, I learned several things. One, it gave me the confidence to speak in front of others. I learned how to take constructive criticism. I benefited from that. That benefit was the confidence to get a job. When I took the suggestions in the club, when I started speaking in front of a group and remained speaking through my role, doing table topics, getting topics that you're unaware, learning how to think on your feet, learning how to speak on your feet. I first started working managing the Berkshire Hathaway account. I started as a back office role, not the face of the company. It didn't take long until I was dealing directly with the executives. Today I give executive briefings for Verizon Enterprise in the highest level in the enterprise space. And I'm grateful, and I owe all of that to Toastmasters. Thank you.
Welcome back to TV Toastmasters. I'm Beth Genly, and I'm talking this evening with AJ Coots. And AJ, just before our break, you were saying that thinking about someone you care about or someone you really want to connect with that you know well can really help you get across what? Your authenticity, your inner feelings. That's been something that I'm kind of encouraged to hear it, because I've been thinking for a long time, whenever a camera was aimed at me, that I was just going to start out by thinking about people that I really care about and love.
Good.
And just love into the camera. And I don't always remember to do that, but when I do, it seems like there's better photographs.
Well, the truth is, we can't be afraid and worried about ourselves when we're thinking about someone else. So I think that empathy is always a great place to start. But if you're focused on, oh my gosh, I hope this goes well, it's almost impossible not to have a deer caught in the headlights look. But if you just let that go and you say, I am going to focus on someone that I feel really great when I'm around, or often I ask my clients to think about someone who they have helped, who they have brought to a new place, because as we've learned, business, I don't know about you, but when I started my business, I thought, well, I like photography, so I guess I should get some clients so that I can do more photography, right?
Yes.
But as I moved forward in my business over the several years, I've been in business for 12 years now, something kind of shifted. And I realized that because I do this, photography, storytelling, headshots, it brings so many interesting people into my life that I never would have met otherwise. And so something kind of switched for me, where I realize now I'm grateful that the photography has been in my life, because the people that has brought to me have enriched my life multiple times. So I think that thinking about that when you're getting your photos taken can be a reorienting sort of ballast to help you realize, why am I doing this in the first place? It can be really scary having a big black box pointed at you. And if you can just think, I am doing this to connect. It's not about me looking pretty or not pretty, because honestly, my clients do not care. Obviously, you don't want to look horrible. I didn't walk in this room with magic marker on my face, but
Good.
but you want to connect with me because of what my experience and my what I care about bringing into the world, how that is interacting with you. So I think that if we can think about our photos that way, that we're thinking about the connection rather than how we are appearing, and realizing that that judgment isn't happening on the other side as much as if you connect through the camera, that can kind of be your get out of jail free card of worrying, am I smiling enough? Am I looking pretty enough? Just only connect. That was a book, Only Connect. And I think that that's a good watchword when you're getting your photo taken.
So the connection, that's what makes the world go around. It's certainly what makes business go around. The name of your business, if I understand correctly, is Storytelling Headshots.
Yes.
And I'm thinking there is more specificity to each person's story. So can you talk about how you coach that into the picture?
Absolutely. So as we were talking about lighting, so cinematic lighting is a big part of what I do. So as we were saying before, in movies and TV, they use lighting almost as a character. In fact, if you look at the initial brainstorming sessions as they're planning your favorite TV show, they literally plan the lighting as if it's a character, an actor. And so they're thinking, what is this lighting going to do? How is this lighting going to tell the story? So so that is definitely a specialized skill that I use every day. I would say I'm more specialized in lighting than even using the camera, right? But I do think that component that has a lot of, I use a lot of experience to wield, is also something that you can simplify if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, like, well, what do I know about lighting? Again, getting back to those adjectives, that then you can work with a professional and say, well, these are my adjectives, and then trust that they would be able to use whatever skill they do have in bringing those adjectives to light. Now, having said that, one thing that a lot of people don't understand about photography is that photography is on a spectrum. So
Sorry,
I
had to laugh at the pun, but of course it is.
Very good. I hadn't noticed that. I like you.
Thank you.
So, but photography is on a spectrum, and I'm not talking about good to bad. Of course, that exists out there. But even amongst the best in the world, photography is on a spectrum, and a lot of people don't realize that. They think, I just need a professional photo. But I'm here to tell you, even as a professional photographer, that you don't just need a professional photo. You don't just need a professional photo. It's good if it's professional, but working with different types of professionals will give you a very different range. So I'll explain the spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have your documentary photographer. So that is your newspaper photo reporter. That is your wedding photographer who takes, the picture of the beautiful Vera Wang dress with the cake. It's basically what happened. It's that newspaper photo with the car crash, the bloody shoe. It's what happened, documenting, right? And so these experts live in this world of documenting. They just take what is, right? If you go all the way over to the other end of the spectrum, you have headshot photography. And actually, food photography also lives in this world. So they're very different. And the best way for me to describe headshot photography is actually to use a term from food photography called the hero shot. So imagine with me that you are driving down the highway, and all of a sudden you see out of the corner of your eye this beautiful billboard for a hamburger place. Now, you're a vegan, so you're not even interested in eating there, but you still turn and look because that billboard, you can smell the toasted sesame seeds coming off that bun. You can feel the warmth of the kitchen. And so the promise is not like the objective picture of a hamburger that you would see in the encyclopedia. Instead, it's a promise of satisfaction. That you're going to interact with our product and get to a new place, a better place, right? And so that is what headshot photographers are trained to do. So it's very important when you're looking at photographers in general. If you're working with a wedding photographer, they don't actually have the skills that you need, or a baby photographer. They're very good at what they do, but it's a very different set of skills from someone who is actually trained to tell a story with light.
That explains a huge question that I've had for a long time. I've worked with a couple of photographers and seen some other friends who worked with photographers who were primarily landscape photographers who took the headshots as a favor for their friend. Right? And they are technically fine. They're well composed, they show the person, and they just don't quite have that oomph. Right? They just don't have that oomph, and you're like, why not?
Right. Yes, because a camera is involved, but it's a very different experience. It's like the difference between going to a heart surgeon or a podiatrist. You could ask the podiatrist, could you work on my heart valve? It's been acting a little funny, and your podiatrist might, as a favor, might be the best podiatrist in the world. Yeah. But it's not the specialty. And I think that there's a misunderstanding that all I need is something that's not a cell phone picture. And these professionals they feel pressure to take a job. But I think that there's a huge difference between working with someone who's trained in headshot photography, who can ask you those questions, who can create that range and light. Because going back to that hero shot of the hamburger, right? It's about making that promise happen through lighting. And a documentary photographer, a wedding photographer, does not have the expertise in lighting. And it's not a knock against them. What they're awesome at is like being in the right place at the right time and catching that action shot. And even some photographers who are, they might be a concert photographer who shoots Beyonce, right? They could work with high-end celebrities. If they're not a headshot photographer, they're not going to have the same expertise and training. So so it's an important distinction, and I like to let people kind of go out into the world with a little more information about that.
That's really fascinating. So I'm wondering, in our last 4 or 5 minutes, if you have any stories about changes that have happened with people that you've worked with because of the kinds of photographs that they got from you.
Yeah, great. Well, I really love the process of working with people, because I think often what happens is it's a little bit like getting a logo designed with a real logo designer. There's a difference between 99 designs and a logo. A good logo designer, you'll go in for the mark, but then they ask you all kinds of questions. You learn stuff about your own business you didn't even know. And so
I've been through that process, and it's exactly what happens, and you end up with a good logo designer with something that you feel good about for years.
Yeah, and not only that, you almost have this like educational process of, I now know what my business is about, and I'm even more excited about that, and this mark represents it. Well, headshots are kind of the same way. Like a good headshot photographer should lead you through a process. And I had one client, it was just great. We were doing the session, and I'll tell you two parts of her story. We were doing the session, and the first thing that happened is, as I was showing her some of the first just back of camera shots, there was a sharp intake of breath. She goes, I want to be the person in these photos. I was like, you are. But, you know, the thing is, a lot of us as speakers, as people who are business people, as people who are bringing something into the world, we are spending so much of our energy doing that. It's also developing us, but we don't see it. Other people see it, the growth, the more confidence, but we don't see it. And
we're too busy thinking, I need to get to the next place, and I'm not there yet, so I'm not good enough, right?
Exactly, but you have built things into you. And so like my client who said, I want to be the person in these photos, she is that person. Mm-hmm. And so when she saw the photos, she could actually walk into herself in a more confident way.
Ooh, that gives me little chills.
I know, it's so exciting. And I love seeing that process, because this is all stuff that was in her. She was going to walk into it in the next 10 years anyway. But because she was able to see it, she was able to walk into it so much quicker, right? And then she could just embody that and feel confident because she'd seen it in her photographs. And so I think that, you know, like that logo design process, it really brings you of, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing, that's who I am, and it gives you so much just for you. And then of course there's everything it does out in the world of connecting to people. And then I'll tell you another half of that story. So my client was using her photographs, and one thing that is really important to me as a trained headshot photographer is that I'm going to create a lot of variety within one shoot. So we're going to use tools of lighting and coaching. So we're not going to shoot like 300 shots in front of a brick wall. First of all, we're not going to use a brick wall for reasons I could get into if you had time. But instead of that, we're going to shoot a lot of range. An analogy I sometimes like to use is the difference between working with a trained headshot photographer versus a wedding photographer, just someone who has a camera, landscape photographer, as you mentioned, is like the difference between working with, a community theater actor and Robert De Niro, right? So a community theater actor is going to give that director either a good take or a bad take, but it's going to be one type of take, right? Whereas Robert De Niro is going to give 13 vastly different takes. They're all professional quality, but they're very different. So then that director has the freedom to take that movie whichever direction she wants to go. And in this analogy, you're the director. And it's my job as your headshot photographer to give you that range of yourself so that you have creative expression to put different sides of yourself out there. And so getting back to my client, she had done one of these sessions where we did very different takes, so it looked like she had had multiple shoots. And so she was out populating social media, populating the internet, and she got a very big fish client who came into her. And this lady said to my client, she said, I've been watching your social media for a while, and I knew I wanted to work with you because I could tell you were the mover and shaker in your industry because you kept having all these professional photo shoots done. Well, that was the story she was telling. And that story was that I am an authority, I am credible. I don't just have one shot that I've had for the last 20 years and it's just out there. And also, if you look me up in different places, you'll see it's still me, but it's a different image. And that created this sense that this woman had credibility, was established, and the bottom line is the lady trusted that she could work with her and have great results.
That is where we're going to have to hang it up. That is a beautiful place to finish. We're going to put your website on the bottom so that people can look at more of these photographs. And I want to thank you all for joining us for this segment of TV Toastmasters. I'm Beth Genly, your host, thanking AJ Coots for joining us.
I'm Dottie Love. Associate TV Producer and Director. Toastmasters International is one of the largest organizations whose mission is to help improve your speaking skills. And District 7 is expanding your opportunities to do speaking via television. We have 4 fully equipped television studios and TV Toastmaster broadcasts to over 500,000 homes, plus a YouTube channel. Who knew? We want to invite you to take advantage of using media and television, either in front or behind the scenes. Let me share a few options that you have. First, you can be a guest on a show, highlight your business or hobby or your community interest, anything you're passionate about. Be a featured guest. Secondly, you can train to be a host on an ongoing TV segment. We will train you for that. Third, what about creating your own talk show? We will train you for that as well and give you access to a community media studio to do just that. Or lastly, be behind the scenes, either running a camera or editing shows. You decide which avenue is best for you, and our TV Toastmasters team will help you to navigate to get the most out of your media experience. Personally, I've done them all. I started as a guest, went to hosting, up to directing my own TV show. I don't tell you this to impress you. I tell you this to impress upon you that your personal growth with Toastmasters is directly related to what you take advantage of. And I encourage you to be bold in looking for opportunities to stretch and grow. If this intrigues you, or if you have club members who you think that might be interested in this, please contact us here at TV Toastmasters. I'm Dottie Love, and you can reach me or any of us in the TV Toastmasters family at the contact information at the bottom of the screen. You can also find us on the web. Our website is 7512.toastmastersclub.org.